It does now.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, so remember this, everybody. Now you can be live on YouTube, and you know, if you got grandkids or whatever, you can show them on the video. So I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting with our pledge here. So I'll mute everybody, and then I believe BJ is doing our invocation here in a moment or two. So let me get this stuff all figured out. Here we go. Mute all. Okay. And now,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and BJ, if you'd unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. Today, we stay focused on the objectives we have for the world: peace, tranquility, a true brotherhood and sisterhood of humankind, hunger from oppression, from sickness, freedom to choose our own destinies. We affirm our commitment to our simple Rotary four-way test for all we do and support. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And is it fun? And we reaffirm our commitment to high ethics in all we do. And we give thanks for all the blessings, opportunities, and responsibilities that befall us as Rotarians. We continue forward with our Rotary mission in this challenging era with optimism, renewed energy, and a commitment to service to each other and to humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, BJ, for some good words to be thinking about. Welcome to, let's see, I'll go through. I saw Pat's here, still so there. It's good to see Andrew. There's a familiar kind of blurry face. Joanne is with us today. So everybody say hi to Joanne. She's made it back. So everybody's kind of glad to see you back. I'd also like to let you know that Elise is on the call today, but she has something she'd like to tell the club. If you could unmute Elise and kind of give them an update of how you're doing with things.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Okay, so I just wanted to let you guys all know that my husband, he is still deployed until the end of the year. He's in Italy and he's doing well. He'll be going into Africa sometime this summer for a few months to actually do his mission. And another thing that we decided on was to move to Texas while he's gone. So I will be moving AJ and myself and our whole household over somewhere north of Dallas. We're still on the hunt for a house, but we're hoping to have our house on the market sometime next month.
Oh,
Well, we're going to sorry to see you go, but if you need any help with anything, I'm sure there's a lot of people are more than happy to, if you reach out and we can help whatever we can as you kind of work through these things. So, but thanks for the update. We knew things were not necessarily as easy these days for you. So
good luck, Elise. We'll miss you.
absolutely.
So
Thank you.
with that, let's see. Carol, did it ever warm up back in Ohio? Yeah.
Tell her she's muted.
Actually, it goes up and down because like last week it was really beautiful and now it's a little bit chilly. but the best part is today's my grandson's 6th birthday. So
Okay, let's see. Whoever the sergeant is may want to kind of record that, okay, for posterity's sake later in the program. So, okay, well, we're good, glad. Hopefully, okay, I was gonna say, Allison, did you see the white little tubes I put up at the Skyline and Sunrise? It should make things a lot cleaner exiting in and out of that intersection now. So a couple things, I'll go through some announcements of what's going on, and then we'll get to our program. I think Bob has been doing a great job on the t-shirts. If you have any, probably could still scrounge a couple. And Andy's just sent out the quarterly dues statements, and you'll notice that some of those dues actually included the stuff for the t-shirts. Make sure you record your walking. And if you have dogs, I guess you get double dogs if you got 2 dogs, or triple mileage if you have 3 dogs when you go walking. At least I heard that from last week. Another thing that Frank has offered, if you haven't fulfilled your first Paul Harris, he's willing to match people up to, I think, 500 PS points he can match. So I think it's up to 500 that he would do to get you to your initial Paul Harris. So if you could, if you're interested and haven't gotten your initial one, might want to reach out to Frank or to Al to talk about that. You'll also see the dues things is the same as it has been, but we're looking at going back to the Viscount in a hybrid in July, and we still have some things to work out with that. But several of us sat in on a video last night as far as getting the equipment we need and so on like that. So anybody that doesn't feel comfortable or doesn't want, we're still going to be doing the video and in meetings, and so we still have a little bit of work to do with that, but we'll get through with that going forward. And a couple other things that the board did earlier this week, and some people had asked about how could they help. The Erickson School, we're looking at getting 10 sets of the books that they've asked for. Each set's about $750 or so, at least that's kind of the ballpark-ish. We're going to propose a district grant for July to $4,000 for that, and then match it from club funds. But if somebody wants to donate to the Catalina Foundation, we could roll it that way, and just send a check to Andy if you want to help with that, and he'll pull it to the side, and that's how we'll kind of build our 4,000 or we'll pull it out of the foundation money that we have. But I know some people had asked about that earlier, so that's one effort that we're going to head up. The idea is to kind of get it figured out, get the books on order so we have them ready for them to go in August when they'll be going back to school. So that's heading in that direction. And then the other thing that the board, they authorized $2,500, the Dunbar Center. That was another thing that was on the list that we were looking forward to helping out. They're talking about doing a fundraising feasibility study to see, really what can they raise within the community. And the board has authorized up to $2,500 towards that. And then we're going to look for other clubs to help match it. It's about a $4,500, $5,000 expense that they're looking to try to figure out what's going on and how much funding they can actually go out and try to raise to help with that. We also wrote another letter of support to the congressmen here in the community to help promote things. The city's actually identified some funding to help do some renovation of the Dunbar, but wait and see if any of that shows up. Nothing on the hook from our funding wise, but at least support wise from the club, saying it's a good thing to do so. That's kind of what's going on. And then just as a heads up, and I'll remind everybody else later, we're dark the next 2 weeks. I kind of goofed, so I'll probably have another fine to pay. But that we actually kind of did the road cleanup for our 4th meeting during the month. But right now, Michael is chasing out, and when we do get it finalized, we're looking to try to have an open air patio social for those members that would feel comfortable with attending some evening next week or the week after that. Just, if people are comfortable at a place, if you've got your shots, social distancing, clean and so on, if you want to attend something like that. And then we'll have our next meeting the first Friday of May. So that more to come with that. But that's kind of where we're headed. It'd be nice some people said they would like to kind of socialize. I know a couple other clubs have started to do a little bit of that. So we'll see how that goes going forward. So that's that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Pat Egbert, who's going to introduce our speaker, Eric. And I think we'll learn a lot. I've always been fascinated with the region, with some of my work with wastewater. And when they built the new Ina treatment plant, they basically exposed a lot of irrigation canals and things like that up there. And I know when the Sunset Bridge got built over the Santa Cruz, they unearthed an awful lot of stuff there. So I mean, the whole area has all kinds of stuff. And it's just amazing how many years and decades and I don't know, centuries people live around this place. So I don't know if that's the right term, but I'm going to turn over to Pat and introduce our speaker, and I'm sure we'll learn and see some interesting things. So take it away.
Thank you, Paul. You know, we've been cooped up for a long time. As COVID is waning, it's time for us to explore the Southern Arizona treasures near us. Today, we are starting a once-a-month series to revisit unique places that we can drive to in an hour or so and be inspired by the visit. Today, we welcome Dr. Eric Kaldahl. He's president of the Amerind Foundation, to help us understand how this organization preserves and promotes Native American culture. The foundation supports a world-class museum located within an hour of Tucson. The museum is easily overlooked, but don't do that. It is located near Texas Canyon between Benson and Wilcox. Dr. Kaldahl, I hope I'm saying that correctly, has a compelling resume in the field of archaeology. He now serves as Chief Curator and Chief Executive Officer of the Amerind Foundation. Let us give a warm Catalina welcome to Dr. Kaldahl.
Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon to everyone. And I was wondering if the host could enable my ability to share my screen. Thank you so much. Well, I was asked to share with you about the Amerind Foundation, and we are located about a 1-hour drive. If you're at the intersection where I-19 and I-10 join one another, we're an institution that's over 80 years old, founded back in 1937. And this is a really nice picture of our campus, which occupies 3 square miles at about 5,000 feet of elevation in Texas Canyon. We're right 1 mile off of the interstate between the towns of Wilcox and Benson. And that's looking down at some of our museum buildings. We have about 8,000 square feet of gallery space. And as Pat mentioned, our mission is to help people understand the Native peoples of the Americas through education, research, conservation, and community engagement. To get there, if you'd like to visit us, I hope some of you have already, but if you haven't, you get off at I-10 at exit 318 for the little town of Dragoon, and just 1 mile down the road, you'll see our front entrance. As I mentioned, we're usually quite a bit, well, about 10 degrees cooler than Tucson and 20 degrees cooler than Phoenix all year round. So if you want to get away and enjoy our beautiful setting, if you've ever stopped at the interstate exit that's the interstate rest area that's surrounded by all those beautiful boulder formations, that's actually part of our land. The interstate crossed the northern section of the Amerind Foundation property back in the 1950s. All those beautiful boulder formations are part of our property. We're a unique Southwestern institution. We were founded by a couple of very well-off individuals. Here's a couple of pictures of them at different points in their lives. Our founding gentleman was named William Shirley Fulton, and our founding lady was Rose Hayden Fulton. That's a picture of them in 1906 when they were married. They were born in 1880 and 1881, just a few months apart in the town of Waterbury, Connecticut. After a long and happy career, he had the means to retire at the age of 50. That was the year 1930. And he and his wife decided that they wanted a place out in the American West. And so they bought up 3 square miles of land in Texas Canyon, and they would live there the rest of their lives. And the picture on the right is them celebrating their 50th anniversary in Dragoon, Arizona. The campus that they built, if you've ever enjoyed the Arizona Inn, the same architect who did the Arizona Inn did all the buildings of the Amerind Foundation Museum Complex. So you'll see a lot of similarities. The pictures at the top of your screen are the founder's home, built in the year 1930. It's being designed at the same time that the Arizona Inn was founded. It's a 6-bedroom house that the family occupied with that lovely fountain in the center. Today we use it for receptions, meetings, retreats, family reunions, weddings, that sort of thing. In the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a front view of our campus buildings. The large building on the right is a 2-story art gallery. The building on the left is our older museum building that was built in phases between the 1930s and the 1950s. And you have a front view of our entrance in the lower left-hand corner. So why did they decide to retire out west? Well, when they were married, Mr. Fulton's wife's family had business interests here in the state of Arizona. They operated copper mines near the town of Jerome, Arizona. And after they were married, Mr. Fulton's new father-in-law wanted him to experience the family copper mining operations. So he came out west. He fell in love with the American Southwest. He visited Native American communities in the Hopi villages across the Navajo Nation. He got a bug and interest in being an archaeologist. If you know about the history of archaeology in our state, he befriended one of the giants in Southwestern archaeology of the 20th century, a man named Dr. Emil Howry. Dr. Howry has a whole building named after him on the U of A campus. So he decided in his retirement that he wanted to found his own private research institute to conduct archaeological excavations across southern Arizona and New Mexico. His wife shared his passion to a certain extent. They were collecting Native arts and crafts from the time they were young on the eastern seaboard and continued to collect Native arts and crafts from contemporary artists throughout their lifetimes. By the time they came to Dragoon, when they were about 50 years old, they already amassed a collection of several thousand objects. And so Mrs. Fulton encouraged Mr. Fulton to build his own museum and to get those objects out of the house. Mr. Fulton went on to bankroll excavations across southeastern Arizona. This map, you can see Tucson, a little dot in green, and the city of Benson, and a little brown icon where the Amerind is located in Texas Canyon. All the red dots that you see on the map are places here in southern Arizona, ancient places that the Amerind conducted excavations at. So we were contributing to original archaeological research, and the Fulton's private museum was also displaying contemporary Native American arts and crafts. One of the first excavations we ever conducted in Southeast Arizona was near the town of Gleason, which you can visit today. It's on the highway connecting Tombstone over to the highway that runs southward to Douglas, Arizona. The Gleason site, they found this incredible pot that you see a picture of in your lower left-hand corner of your screen. That pot was painted 1,000 years ago by a Native American artist who made it. And Mr. Fulton was so struck by the beauty of that design that he made that the official logo of the foundation. The people who lived in southeastern Arizona 1,000 years ago were part of the Ho'okam archaeological tradition. The upper left-hand corner is the remains of one of their ancient homes. All the little black circles that you see on the screen were holes in the ground that supported a superstructure of earth and wooden construction. And those were the homes that they lived in. They were farming here in southeastern Arizona. And near Gleason, which today is still a productive area for turquoise, they were mining turquoise and turning it into jewelry that was traded all across the American Southwest and into portions of northern Mexico. Some of the pottery that the ancient folks made here in southeastern Arizona, you see on your screen. They love that star design. There's the logo pot again in full living color. There's also a beautiful vessel that would be, you know, as broad across if you could hold it in person as a gigantic soup tureen with that 5-pointed star and that 4-pointed star. Mr. Fulton originally was doing his own excavations when he decided to start his own research institute. But, you know, he was 50 when he started that encore career. And as he was approaching his 60th year, I think he decided that he needed younger backs to do the archaeology. So he started to hire professionally trained archaeologists from the University of Arizona program. In this picture, you see Mr. Fulton standing, pointing down at a vessel that he helped excavate back in the 1920s. And with him is a younger man, about 40 years his junior, named Dr. Charles DePeso. Dr. Charles DePeso was the first gentleman in the anthropology program at the University of Arizona to ever receive his doctorate from that program. Dr. Peso and Mr. Fulton hit it off. You know, he was firmly in Mr. Fulton's grandchildren's excavation generation, and they shared a deep love of Native American history and culture. And Charlie quickly became from a man who was simply answering to Mr. Fulton's research agenda to becoming a lifelong confidant. When you read formal letters in our archives between Charlie and Mr. Fulton, he calls him Mr. Fulton. But if you read the private correspondence that they exchanged on birthdays and Christmases, Charlie actually just calls him Pa. And their wives also hit off a beautiful friendship with one another, and they would lead the Amerind Foundation into interesting new areas in excavation and exploration. Charlie was a unique and colorful figure in the history of Southwestern archaeology. He had Mr. Fulton's checkbook behind him, so he had pretty much a blank slate to explore whatever he wanted to explore. And at first he explored the areas of southern Arizona, and his wife, Fran, that you see in the upper right-hand picture, was his ever faithful helpmate in all the projects that he undertook. And their two boys, Corey and David, were taken along in all their excavations. In the lower left-hand picture, you see a picture of our collection storage facility that gives you a sense of the scope of our collection. Today, the Amerind Foundation collection contains 40,000 objects that we care for, that runs the range from contemporary fine arts to things from 13,000 years ago. Charlie, in taking the reins of Amerind's excavation agenda, was really interested in the big collisions of cultures from different areas. So for those of you who have maybe visited some of our southern archaeological sites, visited places like Casa Grande National Monument, you know that the southern portion of our state is occupied by a culture of farmers that are frequently called the Hohokam culture. Well, about 7 centuries ago, there were some people from up on the Colorado Plateau who migrated down to southern Arizona, to our part of the world, to Hohokam country. These were people who are in, yes? I'm sorry, was there a question? They migrated down southward about 7 centuries ago. The picture on your upper right-hand screen is the San Pedro River that runs across southeast Arizona, and on that high bluff top, these migrants from the north, and if perhaps you've visited places like Chaco Canyon or Mesa Verde or Montezuma's Castle, Navajo National Monument, Canyon de Chelly, that is the tradition that these migrants came out of. And so they moved down to this area that was full of farmers who were living along our river valleys. And at first they seemed a little bit uneasy to move here. They moved right to the top of that bluff and built a defensive wall around their town when they moved down here. And they brought their gorgeous pottery tradition with them. You see some of their pottery on the lower right, these bright black, white, and red colors that really define them. And they also brought some of their religious structures. In the lower left-hand corner is a kiva. So if you visited places like Mesa Verde, you've probably seen kivas in reconstruction. These are places generally excavated underground that continue to be used by Pueblo people today, people of the Hopi villages, people of the Pueblos near Santa Fe and Albuquerque. And they were building those ceremonial structures here in southern Arizona, not very far from Benson, Arizona, back 700 years ago. In Charlie's continued theme of exploring that collision of cultures and people in time and space, he excavated a Spanish presidio. This presidio is on the San Pedro River Valley. It is a contemporary of the presidio in downtown Tucson. They were founded by the same gentleman, Hugo O'Connor, in the service of their Catholic Majesties of Spain. They were founded in 1775 and 1776. And this is an archaeological site. If you look at the lower left-hand corner aerial photography, you'll see something that looks like a kind of a rectangle that doesn't quite have perfect sides. That was the outer defensive wall of the presidio, and an artist's reconstruction of what some of the buildings inside that presidio look like. He was interested in that collision of cultures between the native peoples of the 1700s and the Spanish Empire. Perhaps the excavation that Amerind is most famous for, however, actually occurred across the border. There is a town called Casas Grandes in the plural, and in there's a ruin called Paquimé. This is an aerial shot of Paquimé. It's one of the most largest, interesting, most complex archaeological sites in the greater portion of the American Southwest. If you look at the small inset map on your lower left-hand corner, there's a little pink square. That's where Casas Grandes is located in the Mexican state of Chihuahua. It's such an important site that the United Nations designated it a World Heritage Site and put it on the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. You see some of their beautiful pottery. It's this pottery that was made some 7 centuries ago that inspired the modern Mexican potters of the village of Mata Ortiz. So if you're a fan or have collected Mata Ortiz pottery in your home, it owes its inspiration to this much more ancient tradition. The town was home to some 5,000 people. It controlled a territory some 30 kilometers in diameter if you were to draw a circle around the site. They were doing some fascinating things like raising birds in captivity. They were raising beautiful scarlet macaws whose native habitat is from the tropics, much further south in Mexico, 1,000 kilometers away. They were raising turkeys for their feathers, not for their meat. And they were raising a bird called a military macaw, which occurs in the mountains above the town. In addition to our long history of conducting archaeological research, today the Amerind functions as a think tank, and all the people in these pictures are archaeologists, historians, Native American studies experts, oral historians, tribal elders, gathered together from around the world and having think tanks on the Amerind property out there in Dragoon. They gather in our library, which is the picture that you see in the center. It's a 20,000 volume research library. It's a very inspiring space for thinking. Mr. Fulton really modeled it after the libraries on the Eastern Seaboard that he was familiar with and expected his architect to execute it. Today, we gather these scholars on our campus and they come here for a retreat of about a week in duration. And they're publishing on some sort of exciting, cutting edge topic in the fields of anthropology or history. They're chosen through a competitive process and we support them financially in coming here. And we also support the creation of a book that flows out of their research. In addition to serving as a think tank for anthropologists and historians, we have a museum that today is open to the public. When Mr. and Mrs. Fulton were alive, some of you may have visited back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. You actually had a call for an appointment to come see the Amerind Museum. And when Mr. Fulton was alive, he walked you through it himself. And after he passed, it was Dr. Charlie DePeso who walked you through it himself. And after Charlie passed, the museum decided it was going to be open to the public with regular visitation hours. Our regular hours today are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. 6 days a week, we're closed. We're open every day except Mondays and on major holidays. And you see some of our exhibits. We have about 8,000 square feet of exhibit space featuring Native American arts and cultures from a variety of eras. The pottery piece that you see on your left was painted by an artist 1,000 years ago. The pottery piece that you see on the right was shaped by a pottery artist about 50 years ago. So our collection runs the gamut of Native American arts and cultures from throughout the greater American Southwest and Northwestern Mexico. Here we see some of those comparison contrasts again, some of our beautiful Casas Grandes pottery from Paquime, and also some beautiful pottery by modern Mata Ortiz artists that drew their inspiration from that artwork. In addition to our collection of cultural objects, we do have a fine art collection. Because Mr. and Mrs. Fulton, grew up on the East Coast, we do actually have a beautiful collection of East Coast fine art painters. Then we also have a beautiful collection of Western art painters. And we also have a beautiful collection of Native American artists from throughout the continent. These are examples of some of the artists that we have in our collections, like Andrew Sinigene on the lower right-hand corner, Harrison Begay, who was a prolific Navajo artist who lived to 100 years of age and produced thousands of paintings. R.C. Gorman, we have some pictures by him from early in his career. Alan Hauser, the famous sculptor, also did two-dimensional artworks. We support children coming here, although in the COVID-19 crisis, Amerind was very, very, very fortunate to be chosen for a grant to expand our educational offerings online. Currently, we're developing 30 online classroom lessons that feature subjects of Native American arts and culture and are advised by Native American arts and culture experts. And we'll be pushing those lessons out to classrooms via our website. We continue to have Native American colleagues and elders come to view our collections. We've had a very ambitious loan program where we loan to many different Native American cultures and museums around the Southwest. And we have some truly singular works of arts and crafts. The hat that you see on the right-hand side actually comes from the Alutiiq people of Alaska. It's a woven hat that a man would wear out when he was hunting on the water. The long brown sticks that you see affixed to the hat, those are actually the whiskers of a sea lion that the hunter would have hunted. This hat was woven 2 centuries ago. And due to a variety of reasons, the tradition of weaving hats like this fell out of practice. And the last few were made about 150 years ago. The Alutiiq Museum, run by the Alutiiq people, did a survey of all these hats in the world, and they could only find 31 left on Earth when they did that global survey. And they've traveled all over, including to the Amerind, to study these different woven creations. And their weavers in the community have revitalized this tradition and begun making these objects again. We have some beautiful singular objects like that basket that you see on the lower right-hand corner. That basket was woven by a Chihuahua Apache artist, and it was left in a cave in southern Arizona prior to 1886, when all the Chihuahua Apache were forcibly expelled by the US government from the state of Arizona. We were proud to have this basket pass through a variety of hands before it was finally put with the Amerind Museum. It was put here at the suggestion, actually, of the Chihuahua Apache historian at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He recommended that the basket come to a museum in the Chihuahua Apache homeland so that they could always come and visit it. To the best of my knowledge, it's the only basket that dates the surrender of Geronimo in any museum on Earth. We're fortunate to have a lot of Native American elders and teachers and artists who come to teach our programs. Every year in the fall, we have a giant cultural celebration. Last year, we were forced to do it online, but we look forward to holding it in person again. We work with one Native nation each year to have speakers, artists, performance artists, and artists sell directly to the public on our campus. Many Native folks still come to use resources on our campus. On the upper left-hand corner, Lola Thomas is a master O'odham basket weaver, and she's coming to gather raw materials, and many basket weavers still do. We have lots of the raw materials for making O'odham baskets, including willow, cattail, yucca, and beargrass. And it is these experts that we have teach our classes and workshops when we could do them in person with folks, or who are now teaching programs online for us. We do have a very robust webinar program that's free to anybody who wants to log into them. Generally, we're holding public talks on Saturday mornings, twice a month from 11 a.m. to noon. This weekend, this Saturday, we have a Navajo artist who's going to speak in the series. So that's something of the history of the Amerind, and you know, started with the passion of Mr. and Mrs. Fulton, who you see there on the lower left-hand corner, and continuing across through the generations of Charlie DePaso, and continuing today by educating new children. We've also had remarkable new donation of jewelry that's come to the Amerind in the last few years, which has gained us some media and press. There's one family that collected 10,000 pieces of Navajo and Zuni jewelry over the course of a century, and they decided to donate that 10,000 piece collection here to the Amerind Foundation, along with a century of business records that tells us who made each item in the collection, how much they paid for it, and what are the raw materials. We have about 200 pieces from that collection out on the floor right now. So if you want to come by and see some of the most beautiful examples of Navajo and Zuni jewelry and the tools that they use to make those things, like this beautiful jewelry box, I would encourage you to come out. It comes with remarkable details, so you can actually check out detailed guides to the jewelry collection where you can find out who made it, when, and what time, and what are the materials and techniques that are highlighted in each and every piece. And I would be delighted to take any questions about the Amerind from you.
Thank you for the amazing presentation. Definitely makes people, yeah, I can see going out and visiting there. So usually post questions in the chat or raise your hands, and Steve will kind of moderate that. But yeah, beautiful stuff and an amazing history.
All righty. President Paul, we've got a few questions lined up. First comes from Jeff Nordenson, and Jeff asks, what is the most problematic issue in having the current mix of cultures in the United States, understanding the extraordinarily complex indigenous cultures?
I would say a lack of attention to their issues and to the historical situations that they find themselves in. You know, I'm reminded we had a talk earlier this year by the Navajo historian, Jennifer Dentondale. She's a professor of history at the University of New Mexico. She's also on the Navajo Nation's Human Rights Commission. And to talk about COVID, she needed to talk about the historical roots about why is there not enough water? Why is there not enough clean water? Why is there not enough power? We had a couple thousand people attended that webinar, and some of the questions I think show a remarkable disinterest in the indigenous people of our country and their history. The project that we're working on right now, providing classroom lessons to children online. We have a wonderful teacher working on those lessons. She's a curriculum expert, and she's test driving those lessons in Cochise County Public Schools. And she wrote a lesson about Cochise, one of the great leaders of the Chiricahua Apache, for whom our county, Cochise County, is named. And the children in their classroom at the 4th and 5th grade levels did not know who that person was and didn't have a textbook where their teachers could go to read about who that person was and his role in history. So it's that remarkable disinterest in the very complex history of the many peoples who make up the fabric of our nation. And, you know, I would say it's that disinterest that leads to systemic problems in ignoring things like clean water and access and infrastructure.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a couple of virtual raised hands. Al Chesser, you're up.
Thank you. I was curious if there was any overlap of the people who were settled in the Mesa Verde area with those that you've been talking about here in the south of the state. It seems as though there was a lot of similarity in the structures that have been retrieved and some of the religious places and housing in the ruins around there. Were they connected in any way?
There's certainly trade and exchange between the two regions. Some of the significant differences, you know, the Ho'okam of southern Arizona have the impressive irrigation canals, which I know some of you have seen. They did not build things like kivas. They built homes that were of earthen and adobe construction. And a lot of the icons that you see in their artwork here in southern Arizona have a lot of similarity to the icons of kind of a regionally shared tradition of religious symbol that we can find all the way down into Mexico. And so while there's trade and exchange with the folks of the Colorado Plateau, people like Mesa Verde, you know, the architecture is remarkably different. They are building out of stone, by and large, not all the time. The kivas, the underground ceremonial chambers, and the incredible density of their sites. You know, they build in these apartment-like homes around plazas, where here in southern Arizona, people tend to have more space between the individual homes that families controlled. Those homes are grouped by extended families around shared courtyards and open spaces, but it's still a pretty open environment. You know, I used to work for the Tohono O'odham Nation, and I worked for their museum, and sometimes I would be out there quite late at night, and you would drive across the nation. And during the day, when you drive across the Tohono O'odham Nation, they disperse the homes and tuck them behind mesquite trees, and they like that privacy and that spread out nature of their communities. And only at night, when the street lights were on, did you really see the extent of the fact that there are 20,000 people living out there, and there are all these towns. So there is a difference in the formation of how their settlements look and how society is organized that continues down to the modern day.
All righty, we had one more virtual raised hand. Pat? Pat, would you like to ask your question?
If you could unmute, Pat.
You just need to unmute there, Pat.
Okay.
There
And
you
about,
go.
I will be heading back to Connecticut, and I live in Watertown, which is a suburb of Waterbury. So I was very interested that the Fultons were the people who founded your museum. In the middle of Waterbury, there is a Fulton Park, and I'm curious now, I'll have to look it up when I get back to see if it was named after your Fultons or one of their family members. Waterbury back in the day was the epicenter of brass and copper. So it's not surprising that he was out west looking at the copper mines. Also, when it's open, I'm a volunteer at the Visitors Center in Tucson, and the display cases have many of the artifacts from your museum. And I'm always telling people, I visited your museum, it's wonderful. If they have time and are looking for something to do, to go to the Amerind Museum. It's wonderful. And it's not just local natives, it's all the way up the West Coast. It's very, very informative, and I highly recommend it.
Thank you very much for that. And while the Hayden family had the copper mines, Mr. Fulton's family actually owned the Waterbury foundry. So they were intimately involved in the business operations there. And that's, the Fulton Park there is that Fulton family.
Oh, very good.
All righty. We had, oh, and by the way, my wife and I visited for the first time last year, and it is a fabulous collection. We really enjoyed the museum.
Thank you.
We have a couple of questions from Joan. She asks if the museum is currently open during the pandemic, and how close is it to Wilcox or Chihuahua?
We are open, and we closed down last year, but we reopened in August. Our attendance has been low, and it's a big place, so you can spread out. We do encourage social distancing, and we do require masks of all of our visitors in our public spaces. As I said, 6 days a week, Tuesday through Sunday. We're closed on Mondays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Wilcox is a 25-minute drive from us over to the east. To get to Chihuahua National Monument proper, that's more like a 80 to 90-minute drive from our campus.
All righty. Bob Delaney would like to know if you have any audio archives of Native American languages, and does the Southwest have these ancient archaeological resources because of our dry climate?
I would say of the Southwest, our archaeological resources are much more visible. It's not that my home state of Nebraska doesn't have a lot of archaeological sites, it's just that they're under fields and you can't see and appreciate them quite so much. But there's certainly a high density of sites all across the Midwest too, but ours are much better preserved and much more visible here in the American Southwest because of that dry climate. We do not hold any archives of recordings. Some of the best, the University of Arizona has some wonderful recordings, particularly of Native songs and oral recitations, as does the University of California system.
Okie doke. A couple of questions, I believe from Pat Egbert. You can let me know if this is correct, Pat, but how do you avoid offending when collecting artifacts that might have religious overtones?
Well, you know, here at the Amerind, whenever we're working on a new exhibit or we're doing a program, we call in, I would call them knowledge keepers, people in the community who are highly respected, who know their way around what is to be shared and what is not to be shared, what is to be viewed and what is not to be viewed. And we certainly compensate them for their time, and they share freely their advice about what they think we should and shouldn't do. And that helps us stay on course. And I always give them full credit as co-curators in our exhibitions for their contributions.
And a follow-up from Pat, on a ranch where he used to live, there are shallow holes surrounded by rocks. Would this have been maybe part of a Native American structure?
I would imagine those are mortars. We have hundreds and hundreds of those on the Amerind site campus. Mortars, frequently you'll see them occurring near mesquite groves. The first date to several thousand years ago, and they continue all the way up to historic periods with the Apache, and they were used with a large stone rock to grind mesquite beans into flour.
All righty, next question, Doctor, comes from Doris, and she asks, what are the current thoughts about the Anasazis moving south?
We have a whole book on that. There's, yeah, actually the Amerind, one of our think tanks is a book called Leaving Mesa Verde that dug into the latest, greatest thoughts on why the Mesa Verde region writ large, not just Mesa Verde, the national park that you can go and visit, but the Mesa Verde region writ large. I mean, it's unquestionable that 10,000 people or so moved from north to point south. And sometime right at the end of the 1200s, first part of the 1300s. Most people still point to a lot of erratic changes in the environment. There's a period in our tree ring sequence that we call the Great Drought, capital G, capital D. It runs from 1276 to 1299. And while people had strategies for dealing with it, it seemed to put a lot of social and political stress on the communities that they were there, and people started to travel to points that they thought would be more reliable and more predictable. And so we see a huge uptick in population around the Mesa Verde, from Mesa Verde into the Santa Fe Albuquerque area, an intervening area called the Pajarito Plateau. And we see people moving southwards into places that are ancestral to Hopi.
All righty, and I think we have just one more left in chat here. How much, Maria Elena would like to know how much time a visitor to the museum should spend, you know, to really be able to get the full value of a visit there. And do you have a calendar of special events that's available?
Yes, if you go to our website, Amerind, AMERIND.org, you'll see a special events section that lists all of our webinars. Right now, we're not doing very many activities on campus. Our museums are built in two different buildings. The art gallery has an ever-changing set of contemporary exhibitions up, including both Western art and Native American artists. And then there's the historic cultural building that includes things like the jewelry collection and other exhibits that pertain to culture and history. Most people take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours to see the exhibit. We also opened up a new trail that you can visit on demand down to a small pond that's on our property, and we've lined it with bird feeders and park benches. So if you want to sit outside, it's about a half mile down to that pond. We just call it the bird pond in our literature, and a half mile back, and that's open 7 days a week.
Great. President Paul, I don't see any other questions, so I'll turn it back to you.
Pat has his hand up. Pat, Mr. Egbert.
So does Bob.
Okay, Pat.
Yeah, well, yeah, yes. Did you have?
Okay.
Pat.
Doctor, I didn't make my question clear. The hole that I've observed, there are about 6 to 8 feet wide diameter, and maybe 3 feet deep. And then around the rim of the hole, there are rocks that are probably 8 inches to a foot that circle it, except for a place where there's obviously was an entrance. And so
yes,
it looked to me
you're
like
right.
there's some
that is
sort
a structure. Yes, you're
no,
right.
I mean, but is it a Native American structure, or is it miners out there just temporarily? If you know, if you've seen that, and I've often wondered who would have built that.
It would be really unusual for a Native American to have a floor lined with stone. Usually they're building into earth. I wouldn't rule it out, but I would want to see the artifacts that are surrounding it. Certainly here on the Amerind campus, we have a lot of test pits from miners. Our campus, they were looking for tungsten to feed the light bulb industry, and they'll shallow out a place to do a test, and they'll put up a temporary, and they'll use some of the rocks to help prop up their temporary shelters while they're assessing a claim. So ephemeral things like that don't yield a lot of archaeological material, not a lot of artifacts. That's a lot of mining tests that you see all across Southeast Arizona. And oftentimes they're not even documented because they'll try something out and they don't view it as worthwhile in making a claim. So it's hard to track down all those different features and who created them. But you're right. I thought you were talking about the holes that are like this.
No.
Which you
I got
find
those.
all
I
over.
Understand those.
All over Southern Arizona.
Thank
And
you.
those are for grinding those beans. Yeah.
Did Mr. Stoft have a question? I thought I saw. Yes.
He did have a question. I wonder if I might ask it.
Yes, please. I'm so
Doctor,
glad you, Bob.
I'm wondering if it wouldn't be fair to say that the grounds on your property are friendly, and if one would be inclined to make a visit, bringing a picnic basket and some walking shoes would not be a bad idea, because I think the grounds are friendly and interesting, and that it's a long way away from some fast food organization. And I've done this. I believe it's a worthy goal to take a picnic basket and see the museums and enjoy, the flora and fauna down there.
Thank you. We do have a lovely picnic area with about 8 tables and a couple of restrooms that are handicapped accessible. Yeah, please do come by. And of course, that new trail also has a couple picnic tables along it that leads down to our bird pond.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stoft. So, and thank you, Doctor. I think we've gone through the questions pretty much. Amazing and actually, fascinating with all the history and so on like that. I mean, it just, everywhere you look, all kinds of different things. And to have somebody that actually would put that together and then, continue to investigate, kind of, like you say, a second gig, if you will.
Encore career.
Yeah. I'd like to thank you for presenting this stuff. I'm sure as times allow, a lot of these folks here will probably make that trek out to take a look-see at it because it does look absolutely, like I say, pretty neat stuff. And as a thank you for you, we will inoculate 10 individuals for polio. That's Rotary's big push. And in your honor, we'll do that. So glad you're able to take it and able to share. And I'm sure there'll be people who go out there to visit. I mean, it's kind of like a jewel in the desert that a lot of people don't know about, which is unfortunate. But I will say, Pat, I saw a memo from Chuck. They're talking about maybe opening the visitor center here in May, or at least partially opening it. So you'll probably be gone by then, but it looks like it's coming back. There's actually a little coffee place or something that's opening up in there. So hopefully maybe by the summer, some things will be going about it a little bit more so. So it'll get warmed up for the sun for when the winter visitors come back. So maybe something for you to look forward to when you come back. With that, you're welcome to stick around, Doctor, if you want. We're going to cover a few more things with the club.
Thank you all very much. I hope you'll come out and see us. It was a treat to meet all of you. All right, take care. Best wishes.
A couple other things on the list. Let's see. Oh, Sergeant time. I think that's somebody that is down to one house.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah.
Anyway, I noticed Anita was on the Zoom earlier, but she's not on the Zoom now. I wanted to just congratulate her on wearing a fine shirt like the one I have, which would indicate it's a Rotary. Oh, yes, Paul does not want to be fined. So anybody who does not have a pin, appropriate shirt, just when you think about it, send Andy a few extra, how would Steve Pender say it? Simoleons, or as Irv would say it, dollars. Couple of birthdays. I noticed this last week. Joan, you had your birthday. What was it, like now you're 30, 31 or whatever. Thought maybe you might want to congratulate you. We congratulate you on your birthday, and maybe you want to throw in a couple of bucks and say something.
I donated last week. I think you were perhaps not at the meeting. I gave to TRF.
Okay, I missed the meeting last week.
In my own honor. I have a birthday, however, that I wish to honor today. Not mine, but someone near and dear to me, another Aries woman turning 99 today. So I'm going to make a donation to TRF in her honor. And I'll give 25 to the club foundation, just be happy dollars. I'm in a good place now and I hope to stay here
Well,
emotionally.
yeah, glad to hear it. And seeing that we're dark next week, I should probably find Andrew in advance of his birthday. You are
I'm
on
here.
there.
Yeah, here I am.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear me.
Oh, no. Yeah. Well, happy birthday.
Well, thank you very much.
Anything
I
you'd
appreciate
like to
that.
say?
This is where you will your house to the club, Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to match the contribution that Joan is so kindly given. And I owe some other happy bucks for the two girls that turned 2 and 8 in March. And I had an anniversary on the 31st. So I don't know what a leg up is, but I think that's, it's probably worth a leg up. And
It says $2,000.
oh, is that it? Well, then, I'll give you 3. How about that?
It's gone
That's
down
for
a
both
little bit.
legs.
All right.
Terrible.
Get out of there. All right.
chest.
Spoken like an attorney.
Yeah, sure.
That's great.
Okay. One thing that's kind of interesting today that Rotary would know about, but I don't know how many individuals in this club would know what happened on this day in 1955.
Okay. 1955.
This day, 1955, what? In regard to what?
That Rotarians should know about.
Oh, dear.
Oh,
Your wife
Well-
was born.
No. Okay.
Bob knows.
Okay. On this day in 1955, the polio vaccine was approved for general use by the government. It was considered safe and effective on this
right.
day, 1955. Al, you should have known that, so you could throw a couple of comments.
I know. I should have known that, and I will. And I also have a question maybe for Cheryl, because I know that today is National Bean Counter Day. And I took that to mean like accountants and things like this. So help me out.
I'm
Cheryl.
not an accountant. I do tax preparation as an enrolled agent, but I am not,
Oh.
definitely not an accountant.
A good point. I wouldn't want an
I have
accountant.
a degree in mathematics, but that has nothing to do with accounting.
It sounds like Al's adding it up a little bit more.
Yeah, it looks like Al is going to keep digging a hole, and I don't know how many beans he has to throw in, but maybe Pender can tell us how many beans it takes to get a leg up.
Yeah.
How many what, Al? I mean, what's
Well,
your name?
simoleons or beans, how do you translate
beans.
those into dollars?
How many beans is a leg up?
Oh, man. Beans.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
I don't
we'll just
know.
go with dollars.
You got me. I don't know how many beans into a leg up.
I'll make there's no answer here. We're relying on you, Steve.
$100.
There is no answer. But see,
Is
nobody
Pat
got that-
coughing up for flirting with the 4-way test?
Flirting.
It's fair to give nonsense answers.
Oh, I see. But they don't know necessarily it's a nonsense answer. That's the challenge.
Well,
There was
before
there was that
Back
song,
to
Why
the
Do Little
start.
Children Put Beans in Their Ears? I remember that one.
Okay, well,
Right.
we'll drop the beans for now. Before we get to Happy Bucks, anybody know what important event happened on this day in 1917? And it does not involve Rotary.
17.
Is that when you were born, Irv?
Close. Very close. Okay, it's the day Lenin returned to Russia.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Oh.
any Happy Bucks? I'll open it up to everybody. Steve, do you see anybody raising their hand for happy bucks?
Bob Stoff, Mr.
Bob
Stoff.
Stoft.
I've got happy bucks, $25 for my oldest granddaughter who just turned 21 a few days ago, and another $25 in happy bucks for my middle granddaughter who just turned 20 about 10 days ago. So a happy birthday to Anna Cosette and happy birthday to Mary Michael. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else before I turn this back to Paul?
I do, Irv.
Al,
Yeah, it's me again.
he's back.
Yeah, I have a leg up because I am so happy to see one of the most wonderful members we've ever had in our club back among us. Joanne Westerman is here, and so yeah, you lady, sure good to see you.
Aw, thank you, Al. You're the best.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, Paul, it's up to you.
Okie dokie. Well, I think we're going to grow our virtual membership a little bit. Elise may be leaving town, but she still wants to be part of the club. So keep our fingers crossed, and she can virtually come in and visit. We can see how she's doing, and if she needs any moral support, I'm sure we're all here for her with that. And so we'll look at that from that perspective in a positive. Secondly, a couple other days in history. Walter Cronkite started his anchoring the CBS Evening News in 1962. And I think there's a school of journalism or something north of here named after that. So, and Wilbur Wright was born in 1867, something about an airplane with him. And then Charlie Chaplin, 1889. And more importantly, the Book of the Month Club was founded on today in 1926. So, keep your books and cards coming. You already beat me to the bean counter, but here's another one for you. It's National Clean, and this may be a little bit more appropriate for this group. National Clean Out Your Medicine Cabinet Day, and don't dump them down the sewer because it's not good. They need to go back and be recycled. Or put back into, there's a lot of the drugstores that actually will take them back, but old and expired drugs, when they go into the sewer, they go down to, you don't want to go there because it goes into the groundwater ultimately. So that, I'd like to thank BJ for the invocation today, Pat for our introduction, Irv for keeping on top of the happy bucks and such. Remember, I'll send out a wagon wheel with some updates and what's going on, but we're again looking to try to have some sort of a social event in the next couple of weeks that's outside where we can socially distance for those people that want to come and kind of say hi to each other. We had 15 people do the road cleanup last Saturday, and then I think 7 or 8 of us actually sat around a picnic table and had breakfast afterwards. So we can do this. We just need to be careful, but I'll put that in the wagon wheel and kind of remind everybody what's going on. Our next meeting will be May 7th about youth protection. Candace Pardee will be talking. So that's something to look forward to there. A couple things. This was an interesting meeting relative to the history of this whole area. Some things to think about. When you walk into the desert, it tells you a different story every time you venture out into it. Not only are the plants different, the sunsets are different, the cloud formations, the sunrises, the desert is completely unique unto itself. And I think we really need to appreciate what we have and where we live. So with that, I think I've covered everything. Everybody be safe. I think most everybody's already on their way to getting their shots. We are investigating and actually have a couple of good steps towards the virtual and the combined hybrid, and looking forward to that coming up. So be safe out there, get your shots if you haven't, and look forward to you. Andy, say to your wife, take care. Hope she's feeling better, and looking forward to you guys getting back to Tucson, but you probably come back when it's hot. So, okey doke, that's it. See you hopefully in person here in a week or two.